You're watching W.Media and we are coming to you from Mumbai Cloud and Data Center Convention and Awards 2023. I'm Deborah Gray, Regional Editor, South Asia and Middle East, and joining me today is a very special guest, Mr. Dominic Vijay Kumar from Art Housing Finance. So, it is the BFSI industry that, in a way, was one of the first sectors to demand data centers.
Correct.
How has that growth taken place? How has the BFSI industry led to the growth of the data center industry, and how has the data center industry in turn led to the exponential growth of the BFSI industry?
See, when you look at the legacy of BFSI, it's basically BFSI was nothing but a banking industry. So as the consumer data become more and more, the sustainability of the data and the customer requirement was the main target. The customer experience was having a hit. So you can't afford to have everything on a capex mode. That's the time where the data center BFSI started exploring the data center from the customer centric point of view, not from the core systems. So when you look at the core systems, it's always within the data center. But when you look at the customer applications, your mobile apps, your banking apps, your whatever you do today, ICICI, HDFC, any banking apps, or any even my Art Housing Finance app, whatever we do, it's a customer service app which doesn't need to be onto the in-house data center. Then we need to have it in a cloud-based data center where the customer experience is very important. Today, when you look at the Millennium and Gen X consumption data, they need everything on the faster side. For that, you can't have an in-house data center. You need to have a bigger team for that. You need to build everything, and there's a capex cost which keeps coming up. That's where we started exploring the data center. That is, we looked at private cloud, public cloud. Again, it depends on the kind of business you do and the kind of regulators requirement you come into picture. There we started hosting our application. That's why the demand for data center went up. And today, when you look at, I think India is somewhere around with 100 place or 13 place somewhere in the world where the data center consumption is maximum. Today, anyone for that matter, it's not only the BFSI, you talk about the e-com company, anything for that matter. And during this special, especially, I'll give an example, during the Diwali festivals, where your consumer data is more. Customer wants to buy something, he wants to buy gold, he wants to buy consumer durable. Now for him, he doesn't have time to go all the way to do it. He only ways to get in, So it's, and one is the e-commerce part. Then when you come at as a lender, I need to have a system where he can get things done within fraction of second or 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That's where I look at a cloud-based data center. Because during that peak period, I don't invest money on that. I take it on an OPEX model, I use it, then I shut the server also. So when I look at my capex against opex, yes, I'm at a proper side and there is no outflow of cash. And from the security point of view, from the regulator point of view, your core system is still with you, data is protected, customer data is very secured and kept. So there's nothing going to hamper you at that point of time.
I'm glad you brought that up because that is one of the biggest concerns.
Yes.
The BFSI sector, in fact, initially almost exclusively only had on-prem data centers.
Correct.
And has only now started looking at cloud, and that too for very specific functions.
Correct.
And there are still lingering concerns about security. So what would you say to allay those concerns?
See, when you look at the security comes into picture when you talk about consuming a customer's data. For your and my data, which is available on the cloud, has to be secure. So there are multiple ways we look at securing it. One, to be very frank, whatever you do, end of the day, if somebody has decided to go with a short, you'll surely do that. Today, I think Eshedo, I don't know name the bank, Eshedo also, there was a breach in one of the leading banks in India.
Yes.
Okay, and unfortunate that, and it was one of the thing where the FDs of a customer is available there. Imagine so much of customer value when his system is
that is
hit.
Scary.
Okay, that's really scary. So whatever you do, today you have security built at all the levels. Security built at the data center level, access level, core lending system level. Even when you're trying to make a checker, concepts are brought in. Though you keep all this thing in place, you still have a breach coming up. But that's a gradual process. We are, when you look at security, the latest DPDP bill coming up and all that, things are...
The regulatory environment is also changing.
Very stringent, very stringent. But RBI himself is coming deep into it. The finance minister coming deep into it. I'll give you an example. When you look at data security part, initial days, if you want to go for a loan, you used to take financial bank statements from everyone. Today, the finance minister has brought in such a technology where you call something called account aggregator. You don't have to take a physical statement. That statement which was supposed to be misused, manipulated when you're taking a loan, cannot be done. It directly pulls out from your bank. So you're securing your data there. I'm respecting the customer's privacy there. I'm taking care of the customer's data there. So we are trying to build a better things, and regulators getting into a lot of new policies, processes. Make a checker concept has come up, and everywhere people are bringing two-factor authentication. So we know what's happening. Every transaction, there's a law created. So investigation is getting. And it has become mandatory for us to go for an audit, periodic audit, VAPT audits, so that how secure is your application, how stable is your application, where all your gaps are, the functional gaps, security gaps, or is there any flow leakage in your workflow system. So these have been monitored, been adhere to the regulators requirement, but you can't have 100% things. Security is something which cannot be 100% always.
True, but whatever you say, that is reassuring. Let's now move on to something else, which is again a huge buzzword these days. All these new technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things. There's a virtual explosion of sorts. So how have these new technologies helped you, and how have these changed in a way your decision drivers in terms of what kind of data centers or what kind of digital infrastructure you need now?
See, artificial intelligence and machine learning have played a very important role in our segment, especially BFSI, NBFCs, or HFCs for that matter. When you look at the utilization of these is gearing up. What 5 years back we thought is not that what we are thinking today. Today, everything should happen. For example, if I had to build a system, I need to have a system in such a way that manual intervention is less involved. I need to, I was just talking to somebody there, on one of the data center vendor. You have systems where when you pull out a rack, when you touch a switch, you get an alert on your system. Those days it was not there. So that's where your artificial intelligence is coming into picture. Now, if somebody wants to open a rack, there's an access control given to them. If you touch the switches, there's an access control given. So these are something which is, and at the same time, artificial intelligence is more used in your functional thing from the customer centric point of view. To have this, you need to have a better data center, because artificial intelligence requires more of compute power. Because when you run AI carries with your ML needs more of compute, more of. So for all this, you cannot go for a capex model, and it is not viable to go for a capex model. You need to go for an opex. That's where your DC comes into picture again, and the DC you look at private, public, or hybrid model. That will help you out in doing it. I'll give an example on artificial intelligence. We recently built an artificial platform where we do a credit analysis of a customer. Now, this credit analysis is something which cannot be done on my data center, in-house data center. I need to have a cloud where I can, because churning of data, when I have a huge volume of such unstructured data, I can't be running it every second. So for that, I need to have a data center where there's sufficient space, compute is available. There you start running, and the availability of the end results has to be in the fraction of seconds. That's okay. And this fraction of seconds will help the customer to look at my business in a different way. If I'm going for a loan, why I always present, because I'm coming from the same industry. So when I go for a consumer loan, and for that, if I had to get a loan in 5 minutes, that means my data, my credit history is studied by a system, which is where artificial intelligence, ML is involved in that. These two along, and when this is hosted not on the in-house data, it is hosted on a cloud, which is integrated with from different places you pull your data from. That's where system plays an important role. And for all this, it's all interconnected. Your DC has to be your computer has to be good, your artificial intelligence tool and ML, all this has to be in sync to get an output. End of the day, millennium or a Gen X kids, today they want things to be in the faster way. For that, whether I have an in-house data center or now in-house will not help me out to run this place from the capex point of view, from the functionally it's not viable.
But are you looking at multi-cloud? Because it's not just hybrid, there are people who are using different types of cloud as well. Are you looking at that?
Today we use public, we use private, then we use colo also. Today what's happening is, because of the real estate space constraint, where you can't have anything. And to be very frank, we have an in-house data center. There's a huge cost coming from a real estate space, maintaining games and all that. So I do a colo. So when I do a colo, I buy a space. So I work on multiple models. One, I work on these colo places where my core lending systems are available as per the regulatory requirement. Then my customer-facing applications are hosted in the cloud where they can access. But again, all these are integrated on the same thing. And today you talk about the API integration and all that. It's all cloud-based only. It is nothing is in-house built. I don't have to just pull it. Today, if I'm pulling a data from Aadhaar, UIDI, it doesn't come from its in-house data center. There's a customer interface which has been built on the cloud, not at the core system. That's where your data center, and different companies look at data DC at a different levels. At how do you want to place it? Today, when you look at other organizations, other than BFSI domain, they all hosted everything on the cloud. Today, you talk about any e-com company or you talk about any startups, they prefer going on a cloud. Why? That's very viable for them. It's use and throw basis. Use it, other if you don't use it, just shut it off.
I'm not sure cloud guys would like to hear that, use and throw. But tell me something. what would you say in that case? Say over a period of the next 5 years,
Yeah.
what do you foresee in terms of growth of the industry, the interconnected growth of the BFSI industry as well as the cloud and data center
See,
industry?
we look at a growth of around 5x in next 5 years time, because the utilization
Really?
is so
That
much.
much?
Yeah, that's because today when you look at the banks, you look at NBFCs, you look at HFC, then you look at microfinance companies, there's a huge set of business coming up into picture, and every business has got its own amount of data. When you look at the microfinance companies where you get a small loan of 3,000, 4,000, you find a hell a lot of customers of that. That data you cannot store it on thing. So in the next 5 years down the line, even regulator is very clearly working on it. I think many banks have approached RBI asking them to set up a policy and give it to them that, what has to be on the cloud, what shouldn't be on the cloud. That clarity which they are working on, I think RBI should come out with a kind of regulations shortly, where see 5x could be a little bit exaggeration, but I feel that should be the growth, because the kind of data we are consuming, the kind of data we are going to utilize, looking at the economic growth next 5 years down the lane, what we keep hearing about the GDP and all that. So I feel that that's how it's going to grow, and DC is going to be a important part of your life in the business. Because today I don't want to buy a computer. I don't today when I look at DC, I even can have a virtual desktop and laptop. I don't have to invest on this. It is not only my core applications, it's even my user level laptop and desktops. I can buy a system, pick it up from a DC. Today I think there are a few data centers which are offering that desktop based application, VMware based applications, where I can use them pay per use as I use them, and later I can shut it down. So that's where I come into picture. Licensing is not an issue for me. I buy a license, I can again use it on the data center license. There's a consume cost, I don't have to do any kind of booking on my books. I show it as an OPEX for me. But that's where the growth we are looking at it. And that's going to happen, because nobody wants real estate. You don't have space. You don't have to have. And when you talk about real estate, it's not only the real estate. You talk about the electricity, you talk about the consumption, you talk about the cooling, and there are multiple things which comes into if you have a data center. Because I know the thing, because we had a data center. We recently moved on to the cloud. Okay, and we recently moved, and we're still working on the hybrid model till we get a proper clarity on the product, the core lending system. So I know the when I go to my CFO and asking for an approvals, I know the pain I go through. But there are many things comes into play.
The CFOs always say no.
They always say everyone uses cloud. Why don't you use a cloud? There's a different way you work on it. You look at it in a different angle also. For us, end of the day, how do you satisfy a customer? That's very important for me.
There is another thing, but yes, customer satisfaction is important, but a lot of customers have also become very demanding when it comes to the question of sustainability.
Yes.
And we know data centers are major power guzzlers. And as somebody who depends so heavily on data centers, what do you think can be done on the sustainability front?
So when you see sustainability, it's more of an adaptability, how you're going to adapt it and start using it. If you know your customer requirement is this, then you need to build a platform in such a way that it's just to be sustained for, because you need to go to, see, I'll tell you one thing, in our regulatory requirement, there's something called capacity planning. Yeah. So if you do a capacity planning, your sustainability automatically comes into picture. Next 5 years what you want it, and you need to sustain that, and you have a growth of your customer coming up. If you're looking at customer as your important thing, then you need to maintain the sustainability. For that, you need to have proper things in place. So that's where you build a sustainability, and without sustainability, things can always go bad.
That's so true.
If I as a customer, if my Ola app doesn't work for me for 2 minutes, I lose my cool and say I'll go to Uber. So that's how the things are going. For that, I need to build a system in such a way it is sustainable, and next 5 to 6 years, I look at it in a growth factor. That's where we think.
So the sustainability that I'm talking about, though, has more to do with environmental concerns.
Okay, you're talking about the environmental concerns.
So on that front, as you mentioned, there are millennials, there are Gen Xers, now even Gen Z, they are so app happy, but at the same time, they are also very environmentally conscious. So have you had customers talking about, say, green energy initiatives or more, green agenda, so to speak?
If few customers speak to us on that, the kind of power consuming, how much as power is consumed, what you're going to use it. And people go to the extent of talking, how is your carbon footprint being maintained?
Exactly.
What is your paper? Why do you use so much of papers? Because one paper is so many trees has been cut. So they come into picture. And environmental, when you're talking about, they don't want too much of people say that, when you're walking across the data center, you find a lot of radiations coming up, heat coming up. So they don't want that to happen. They want something which is built in such a way that there is one is environment friendly. Second is it shouldn't affect your humans. That's how the people are looking at it. I'm not much onto this. Yes, customers have spoken to us on this, and they were very, very keen, especially from the carbon footprint and green energy. They don't want pollution to get, they don't want pollution to come up. But I come from a place where that's maximum pollution is there in Delhi. So there you cannot have much of sustainability. Yes, go green is something which will have a lot of trees coming up, and energy level saving, consuming, what we look at it, save power. That's where you switch off basic things. We want switch off your light, switch off this, switch off that. And you talk about your computers and the servers and all those things. Cooling is very important. Second thing is the small form factor kind of devices which doesn't consume maximum amount of power, which can something. And the cooling, what you're going to use for your data center, how are you going to use it? Today you have pressure cooling, you had liquid cooling, you have multiple cooling things. Chip based cooling is a come out in my picture. I was reading one of the article, which is very, very important, and which helps us in maintaining your system. Like I was talking to someone about the rack and the UPS, where you don't have to have a normal UPS where your energy consumption is more. But when you start using this, the automatically your energy, your green energy kind of consume comes into picture, because that's been built in that way, environment friendly kind of thing. That's how I look at it. Though as a CTO, we don't get much involved. It's part of that, but part of the process we maintain.
Part of the thought process.
We always maintain that, because at any time environmental people can come up and question us, and we don't run a DG.
It has to be a part of the thought process. Perfect. So finally, you are attending Mumbai CDC today. You've seen the huge crowds. What's the buzz like? Could you describe to us your experience?
As I just walked in, I could see with so many people, and things are going on. I would really see there is some impact on the data center. People are actually want to know what's happening in the DCs, how they're going to consume it, how is it going to help them in their business, line of business, and we're going to learn a lot of things today. And there are a lot of things which I'm going to learn, because I was seeing that one of the PDU units has got a locking system, and which was new to me. Otherwise, we normally use a rack, we use a big plugs. But when we saw that lock, it's something new to us. So for me as a CTO, it's good that I come to know what's happening in the industry, and this will help me out to pass on my KT to my downline team. And it's easy for me when I start talking to the DC vendors, when I'm trying to migrate or do a colo and all those things. It's easy to when they say something, I'll be able to align my thought process with that. That's all about it.
Thank you so much for talking to us, sir. We have a lot more that's going to come out from the Mumbai CDC event that's taking place here. We'll be doing interviews throughout the day, so stay tuned. Until then, in Mumbai, I'm Deborah Gray.